Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and today we are reading the Meno. The Meno is a dialogue between the great Socrates, master of the dialectic, master of the logos, potential savior of humanity if we're able to learn from him 2,000 years later. And he is in a dialogue with a chap named Meno, who asks the question, can you learn virtue? Virtue is the excellence, but also the innate excellence, the naturalness, the most authenticness, but also the bestness of something. The Greeks can talk about the virtue of a horse, but we want the virtue of our soul, or, if we were being a little bit more accurate, the virtue of the self. How do we become our most authentic, bestest selves? Can you learn that stuff? If you can, how do you learn it? Who do you go to learn this stuff from? Or is it not learnable? In fact, one of the questions we've had to address to answer that very question is, well, what exactly is learning? To ask whether or not virtue is learnable, you've got to know what learning is. And we've been through a few dialectics about that, which means what we are gaining is not an opinion. It's not a personal belief. We don't pick Socrates' philosophy because we like it. We don't choose Socrates' philosophy over Hegel's philosophy or Kant's philosophy or anything like that. That's not philosophy. That's stupid. The significance of it being presented to us through a dialectic is we can follow the steps ourselves and come to a conclusion based on truth. And that's what this game's all about. Seeking truth above all. That requires character, that requires courage, and it requires sacrifices. We have to sacrifice our ignorance that we might really, really like. Meno talked about that. He said, well, I don't like that I've been shown not to know about virtue because I like giving talks about it. I think they're great talks. Other people think they're great talks. I go on all these podcasts. They didn't have podcasts back then, but he said, I go on all these podcasts talking about what it means to be virtuous, what it means to be excellent. And I still think I give great talks on virtue. Even though I've just discovered, I don't know what it is. Not only did he discover he doesn't know what it is, he doesn't know how to think. He can't reason well. He can't give a definition of something. He doesn't know what a definition is. So he couldn't give a definition of virtue. Socrates helped him out, gave him a few examples of how to think and how to communicate our thoughts properly. That's called the dialectic, the structure of thinking, the structure of reasoning, the structure of what he called the friendly way of relating to our fellow man. The dialectic is all of those things. In fact, the Greek word is philos, how to be a true friend and a true lover. Requires a way of being and a way of communicating called the dialectic. And we got to follow along with Socrates as he gave a definition of the dialectic, gave a demonstration of the dialectic, gave several other demonstrations of the dialectic in different contexts. For Meno, he had to give one on shapes, literally a dialectic on shapes and colors, and that was the only one he could follow, which is funny because 2,000 years later, we have a saying for people who can't think well. They're motivated by shapes and colors. The Republicans. Trump has to hold up a cross, the shape of a cross. That's my man. Color. Brown people bad, white people good. People who are motivated by shapes and colors are the stupidest and the ones that are preyed on by fascists like Republicans and capitalists and so on. So even back then, to talk to someone like that, he had to use shapes and colors as the example. Specifically, what is color? Well, no, what is shape? That which follows color. Oh, I should know this one. Seeing as I'm insulting him for being ignorant. I'm actually not insulting him for being ignorant. I'm insulting him for holding on to his ignorance. Whereas he has a slave who was able to let go of his ignorance because he saw that, well, he would be of greater benefit to himself and to others by letting go of what's false and actually doing the work to learn what's true. Very few people in the public sphere then and today have that level of integrity. Let me get the conclusion. Oops. Shape is the boundary of a solid. What's the conclusion of the dialectic on shapes and colors? Shape is the only one of the truly existing beings which always happens to follow color. So shapes and color. Now, of course, we're in the dialectic, so we're really, in order to define something, we're really talking about being. So Sok had to throw in being, which we know Meno isn't familiar with. Because the way of reaching being or awakening ourselves to the higher cognitive function that we all have that lays dormant until we do this is the dialectic. So not only is the dialectic how you think well, how you communicate well, how you reason well, how you define things, but it also is the spiritual process, the spiritual method, the yoga. In that it prepares your mind to experience the realm of being. So already we have distinguished what we are doing here from all of the other what we call sophist ideas of philosophy, the mainstream, the views of philosophy that prevent us from actually learning, actually waking up to the nature of reality, actually seeing the commonness with our fellow man, keeping us stupid and easy to manipulate by the idiots who are in power currently. We are in a barbaric age, but fortunately, we have what we need to rise out of that barbaric tradition and become rational, become virtuous people through the dialectic, which is fantastic. We will raise our mugs in celebration for the fact that we have the potential, we have what we need, in this book especially, to save our species and become better, become rational, and join the human race. I hope you have your coffee. The next dialogue we'll read is Socrates talking to somebody at a cafe, and they ask the question, are you really doing philosophy if you're not also drinking coffee at the same time? That's a funny joke. So I hope you have your coffee, and I hope you have your curious hat on. I hope you're curious about something. I hope you're carrying a question with you. And just to go back to my recap there before I go off on too much of a tangent. Yeah, so Meno is unfamiliar with being because, in part, because he's unfamiliar with the dialectic, but also, as Socrates points out, he was let out of his school. He was let out of his school without having gone through that initiation process, which was confusing to us to begin with, but As we progressed through the text, we went through a dialectic in which Socrates outlined, or guided us through our own reasoning. So it's not belief, it's not opinion, it's reasoning that everyone can share in. Doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, or if you're white or you're brown or you're a slave or you're old. Anyone can go through this. Which is significant because when Meno gave his definition of virtue, he said, hey, it's different for men than it is for women. And there's a different virtue for slaves, different virtue for young people and old people. Of course, we put that to bed quickly with a dialectic. Socrates didn't slap him up the side of the head and go, come on, you're racist, don't be racist, you're sexist, racist, moron. He didn't say that. He led him through a dialectic, a series of questions, meeting him where he's at, starting from where he could see. That, hey, by the way, you can see physical things, right? You're familiar with that world? What about wealth and beauty and health, the things that you consider virtuous in the physical world? Is it different? Is health different for a man or for a slave than it is for a old person or a woman? Or what about wealth? Therefore, the things we consider virtuous are universally virtuous. Which is neat. So, going through that dialectic, going through a similar dialectic on what is learning, we came to discover what is universally true through the dialectic process, just as virtue is universally true, just as health and strength and wealth is universally true, so too is reason and understanding through the dialectic, leading us to discover for ourselves that learning is ultimately remembering.
Well, you're doing your best. Okay, so sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
What feminists want is to specifically...
No. I have been promising every stream that I'm going to improve my soundboard. I've been trying. Dear Lord, it's hard because I don't know anything about coding, and it seems like in order to progress over the hump that I'm on, I have to learn about it. I don't have the time. So you're going to have to put up with things like this.
You've been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now?
So I apologize. I apologize for Emma and her filthy mouth from the majority report. Check that out if you like reasoned reflection on the nature of politics and the society that we live in. If you like reasoned reflection, understanding, causes, principles, the sorts of things that we dig in this channel. And if you like insights too, a lot of insightful people on that channel. So, learning is a remembering, which is going to mean nothing to you unless you are learning to read, which involves following along in the dialectic, becoming curious. If you already think you know what learning is, you're probably not going to learn anything new that challenges your ignorance that you're holding on to. But if you do have an open mind and you are curious, or you have courage and character and integrity, then you have followed along with that dialectic and come have seen the conclusion for yourself. Because once again, understanding is universal. You don't have to kill anyone or put anyone in jail or impoverish anyone or any of that shit. It's for everyone. That's why we're here. But even then, even with the understanding that you've nailed down, we want to move from understanding to knowledge, to know that that's what learning is. which would mean you'd have to experience it, experience a kind of insight or remembering. And ultimately, those things we remember are not of the physical world. The physical world reminds us of things. You've never seen beauty walking down the street. Well, seen a beautiful person walking down the street if you're lucky. You've never seen justice itself. You might have seen a just person. So how can we recognize those things that you've never seen or even learned about? Kind of remembering. And that movement we went through last time, that's the movement from right opinions through an intermediary, ending in knowledge. That intermediary is what we do to nail down our opinions, to make them our own so that we see them for ourselves. That's the application of the dialectic. Or rather, that's a question we're carrying. I wonder what it is. Because, as we saw last time, right opinion, if it's genuine right opinion, is no worse of a guide than knowledge. You can know how to get to LA and guide someone, or if you happen to have the right opinion of how to get there, maybe you've heard it from someone who's been, then yeah, you could give that advice to a friend who's going to LA. So right opinion, so long as it is right opinion, is just as good a guide, which is great for us because we want to get to that knowledge stage, but we have to start somewhere. That's why we read. That's specifically why we read Socrates, someone who's gotten there. And we know that because he said it. He said, well, there are a few things that I say that I actually know, but there are things that I do know. He has knowledge about some things. And we talked about owning your grandma on Facebook, because a lot of people like to misquote Socrates by saying he's wisest because he knows nothing, which is a handy thing to misquote because you can justify your own ignorance. Hey, if Socrates is the wisest person ever, well, I'm just as wise as Socrates because I know nothing as well. Not what he says. That quote actually is, I am wisest because I know what knowledge, because I'm not going to mistake something unknowable for something that can be known. So he knows what knowledge is. That's what we read last time. He knows the difference between right opinion and knowledge. And what makes knowledge better, we saw last time, is it won't run away. And he used a couple of analogies. A slave that ran away. We didn't like that one so much. But he also talked about a great statue by a great sculptor. And how that's really awesome to have. But it wouldn't be so awesome if your statue got up and ran away. So we want to nail down our right opinions. How do we do that? Well, our hypothesis that we are carrying is, this dialectic he's been going on and on about. So what we are looking to do is look for the dialectic wherever we can. In the text itself, in the conversations, in the structure of the text, because the dialectic is the structure and framework of the logos, of this strange reality, this curious reality we find ourselves in. It seems to be understandable, and we have the right opinion about that as well. That method or structure for understanding we call the dialectic. And it's also the friendly way of relating to people, and it's the way of truly loving another person. Through that way of being, he calls the way of the dialectician. What he said, it's in black and white. It's pretty neat to read that. So, that's where we are. We've seen the dialectic talk about lots and lots and lots. We've seen a few people rebel against the dialectic. Meno himself got quite pissed several times. But then we had angry Anytos come in and not do very well with his dialectic. He didn't like the conclusion that was reached. And instead of changing his mind, which a good person would do, a good person, having gone through the dialectic, reason, evidence for yourself, step by step, coming to a conclusion, you got to trust that conclusion. If it's not what you're used to or not what you like and you throw it out, well, you're being a dick. Anitos was a giant dick. And one of the questions we had was, well, seeing Anitos' dickishness, did it help Meno become less of a dick himself? So we're not sure, but he seems to be able to follow the dialectic, trust the conclusion, because the last dialectic we went through with Meno was that right opinion is a good guide, is as good a guide as knowledge, and he followed along with that, and his response wasn't to get annoyed like it used to be. It was to have a question at the end of that. Well, if that's the case, why do people value knowledge over right opinion? And then the conclusion was, it won't run away. It won't run away. Nail it down, we say. So that is where we are at. And here is my stuffy. It's a baby phoenix. So I'm scrolling through to where we are in the text. If anybody is here in chat, feel free to ask any questions. Or share the questions you're carrying. We can talk about that. That's a lot of fun. And I'm scrolling ahead. So I went back to find that conclusion. Here we go. So we follow the dialectic to move from right opinions through understanding to knowledge, and we can nail down our right opinions with the dialectic and understanding. But also we can push the implications of that and say, well, maybe we can even nail down our knowledge experience, the spiritual experience or the initiation experience or the learning, true learning, when you remember. You want to nail that down with understanding as well. That experience, that knowledge is called nous in the Greek, or pure intellect. And we said, well, we saw in the earlier dialectic that virtue has to be coordinated with intellect. And an example is, well, one of the individual virtues is courage. But are you courageous if you charge at the army on your own? Or are you just stupid? It's not really brave, is it? So your actions have to be coordinated with intellect. So nous is that the word that describes that. Ousia is that capacity to turn around and know ourselves that we have. This is what we have to awaken to awaken our learning process, become rational, become intelligent, evolve out of our barbaric ancestry, our barbaric history. That's ousia. And nous, to share an intellect, to become rational. But of course, we have a question that is, well, hang on a second. If the individual virtues like courage, wisdom, temperance, keeping you cool, justice, and all quickness of learning, memory, he threw those in there as well. If these are all aspects of pure intelligence, aspects of ousia, then can you really say that you have virtue if you only have a part of virtue? Do you have a car if you only have its wheels? So if we really want virtue, we need to have all of those. Well, how do you have all of those? Therefore, we have to go beyond even being. So it's interesting. Kind of makes sense of why Socrates was so what's the word? It's so, oh no, my Gatorade's going everywhere. The cap wasn't on or something. Kind of makes sense of why. Got red Gatorade everywhere. Makes sense of why he could so like easily say, "Oh, so you've been educated. Hang on a second. How come you haven't had an experience of pure being?" For us in our society, that would be like, "What? You don't go to school to have experiences of an eternal reality that always exists and is constantly making each moment of this physical world. You don't have meditation halls. You don't have enlightenment experiences. You don't take acid at college, any of these things that are tied in with that experience." What's he talking about? For us. But for him, well, that's just everyday stuff. It's part of their culture. Literally, it was part of their culture. They had the Ellisonian mysteries where everyone in town would get together and take ergot, which is a kind of like acid, to facilitate this experience of being. But again, you don't just want to have a one-off experience. You want to stay in it and understand it and go through it and go further. And when you come back, integrate it. Use your experience of beauty as your model of beauty in doing beautiful things. Using your encounter with justice to serve as the paradigm or model for doing just things. So there was training involved. Like a half a year, I think, or a whole year. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I got into that. So, common for them, but also because, as we saw with virtue, that's not the end. Don't tell the Taoists. That's a funny philosophy joke. It's funny because that experience of being is considered to be the end, the ultimate, because it's an ultimate experience, but it's not the ultimate. It's considered to be the ultimate for Taoists. Famously, Plotinus, an ancient Greek philosopher, struggled with that. But demonstrated his greatness of character or virtue, that even in this experience of knowing yourself completely and directly and ultimately in the greatest possible experience, the eternal experience, pure ousia, remembering yourself completely as all of reality, even after that experience, Plotinus had the wherewithal, virtue maybe? To wonder even about that experience and to imagine that there could be something beyond it. That's huge and rare. And that's why I said don't tell the Taoists, because that's their thing. Their thing is, well, that is the end. And that difficulty that Taoists, but all traditions would have, we can recognize would come from, well, have they understood what they're experiencing? Is their tradition rooted in understanding, rooted in the logos and dialectic? And the answer is no. Because if your tradition was rooted in the logos and dialectic, that would be true philosophy. That's why what we learn at college currently isn't philosophy. And that's why it might be surprising for us to hear Socrates talk about experiencing pure being as part of regular education. Well, of course it is. And that's the difference that we have to go through and that we are trying to make as a fun and interesting and friendly and communal, even having a community around it, experience. How do we learn what learning is again? How do we relearn learning? How do we pick up our golden age, our tradition from Socrates, and go through that process ourselves and share it with our friends and help our friends go through it? That's this channel. Okay, so with that in mind, we want to nail down our right opinions, which are still a good guide, but you have to top it up. So you have to tune into this stream every day to refresh. And so before we read, we have a refresher of where we're at, remind ourselves of those right opinions, which do serve as our guide until, of course, we nail it down with the dialectic and understanding. So we're learning that as well. And we're practicing that as much as we can. Whatever level we're at, we try and use that to be our bestest. Don't settle for what's comfortable. Don't settle for mediocrity. Don't give up. But instead, in whatever you do, apply your highest vision, go for your highest goals, and use your highest level of cognition that you're at. So, at the level of right opinion, talk about your right opinions. Try and use them. Oh, it won't feel true. That's courage. To follow the logos despite your pleasures, pains, fears, doubts, despite what feels true, despite what you are used to doing, that's the virtue of courage. If you are starting to learn the dialectic, use that as much as you can. Have that guide your conversations. Have that guide your art. We're learning philosophical midwifery. At time of recording, we're in chapter 4, which is literally the dialectical stages of midwifery, or the dialectic applied to surfacing, understanding, and removing our false beliefs about truth, self, reality, and justice. All of those things that Meno is holding on to and Anitos is holding on to that keeps them stuck, keeps them acting like dicks, keeps them ignorant, makes them harmful to society, keeps politics the cesspool that it still is today. That allegiance to that ignorance and that blinds us to reason and evidence, prevents us from following the logos and dialectic to truth. That's called the pathologos. And the dialectic applied to surfacing our pathologos and freeing us from our chains of the pathologos, that's philosophical midwifery. And the stages of that is in chapter 4 that we're reading in the Orange Book, the Orange Sutra, they call it. That's what we were into yesterday. All right. Look. Okay. So it would follow that, well, not only do we want to nail down our right opinions, wouldn't you want to nail down your experiences of knowledge or wisdom, being? You can, sometimes they refer to that experience of pure being as wisdom. But that's one of our puzzles. What would make it just a one-off experience? You wouldn't call someone who's had like a quick flash or they took a heroic dose of some party drug at some festival and experienced pure being. You wouldn't call them wise. So what would make you wise in respect to knowledge? Could it be nailing it down? Making it your own? Is that the significance of going through the dialectic and logos as your spiritual method? And if it's universally true, unlike beliefs and pathologos, then could we make the conclusion that the dialectic isn't just the learning method that we're seeing in this book, but the spiritual method? If so, write those emails. Every Taoist and Buddhist and Kashmir Sufist and Muslim mystic and Christian mystic, anybody interested in actual spiritual experiences and development, write them the email and saying, hey, what you're really doing is scratching at the surface of the universal spiritual tradition that doesn't exclude anything or anyone, doesn't require you to believe anything, is a lot of fun. There's an awesome podcast on it that you can join on Twitch. And all you got to do is add the logos. You can keep a lot of the things that you are doing, just add the logos in. You might find yourself hitting blocks. You might find yourself resistant to that information, as though it's crazy or you know better, even though we're saying you don't have to believe it. You won't believe it. Of course you won't. You haven't learned it yet. In fact, your beliefs will be against it, because that's the pathologos. The pathologos is specifically the cause of human problems, because it specifically blocks you from being open to the logos, using the logos, following the logos. So you won't believe it, but you don't have to. Read it yourself. Solve the puzzles yourself. Discover right opinion. Nail it down with the dialectic and logos. And hey, verify your understanding in direct experience. And then, if you're in the Meno, you might awaken that next question, Plotinus's question. What's beyond even knowledge? Nous, ousia, wisdom. Because if virtue isn't just a part of virtue, how do we go beyond that experience so that we can have all of it? And of course, the key word in the text that talks about that highest level, the key word that hasn't been translated until about 10 years ago, thank you to Juan Balboa. The key word that makes it such that only reading the Balboa translation of Plato is doing philosophy. All of the other past translations have been, well, not garbage, but stinky. You can't do philosophy in it. If philosophy involves this process of collecting the key terms, recognizing there are puzzles to be seen, it's solving a giant puzzle. It's the archetype of video games. It really is. And other heroic narratives where there's a main character going through the hero's journey, has to solve a puzzle. This is the puzzle. This is the best. So we say it's the quest of man, or the noblest game.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Don't eat a monkey. Join the noble quest. That word that distinguishes this from all other forms of opinion that might be presented as philosophy is the word self. Autos. Because even in that experience, you could ask the question, well, someone's got to be, or something's got to be having that experience. Or something's got to cause it. Similar question. So we could conclude the highest idea of God is the self, which is fascinating because, of course, you can't believe that. It can't be an object of belief. It can't be an object of faith. Why? Because you don't have to believe anyone that you're a self. It's the most obvious thing. It's the most immediate thing. It's the most personal, direct thing, yourself. But discovering how and why you are, or the self is, beyond the creator God of pure being, or the highest idea of God, that's what makes all the difference. No good me telling you, it's no good Socrates telling you that. You gotta understand it and verify that understanding. You gotta recognize yourself. Know yourself is the Greek maxim. Know thyself, the highest self, the one self, or the good self. Now, the one self is the term that Parmenides used, Socrates' teacher, but the term that Socrates uses most often is the good self. The good self is the sun in the analogy in the Republic. But that's key because last time we saw Socrates call out to the daemon, "Hey daemon, if learning is a kind of remembering, and that which we remember is that which we can experience, and the true nature of virtue has to be beyond the object of experience, knowledge, how do we reach that good self that has to be always beyond experience? Because we concluded for ourselves through the dialectic that if it can't be experienced, then how do you remember it? Therefore, you can't learn it. That state is called phronesis. In the text, it's translated as mindfulness in purple with a capital M, but the Greek is phronesis, that state of self, the good self beyond experience, beyond knowledge. The question that Plotinus had, the question that we have, and the question that Socrates has in this text, even while demonstrating the art of the dialectic to benefit those around him. One of the conclusions was, virtue therefore has to be in some way, or at least in part, phronesis. It's one of the big puzzles that we have. And that's one of the questions that we were addressing last time. So, there's a little reminder, our daily dose of right opinion. That is no worse a guide than if we were already wise with knowledge. Well, let's nail down our right opinions in the text, turn it into knowledge, and then let's see if we have an experience that we can verify that knowledge in. And then even in that experience, because we've been nailing down our understanding so often, asking the question of what's the cause of things, what's the whole of it, what's experiencing it, constantly wondering about those things, constantly asking those questions, not getting drawn into drama or gossip or bickering, to maintain that state of mind. Because of that, hopefully if we do have that experience, we will take that way of being to that experience, our way of relating to that experience, to hopefully go beyond it to the phronesis, or the one self, or the good self, which is necessary if we want to be a good person, because we've seen in that dialectic that, hey, virtue has to be, at least in part, phronesis. So these are all the benefits we get from having to go through the right opinion, having to go through learning, and not just popping a pill and jumping straight to the top. One of the many benefits we get, of course, we can be a good person. Part of virtue is being able to benefit. We saw that last time. Cold things make other things cold. Ice makes things cold. Equally so, a good person or the good self or virtue would make other people good. That's called benefit. You are not a good person unless you are making other people good. Ultimately, therefore, going through the process of the dialectic of understanding would be also necessary for virtue, because that same process is the method of communication and the method of philosophical midwifery. Oh, and the method of dream analysis too. These are all things that make people better or benefit. So even if there was a pill to give us enlightenment, we wouldn't take it. We'd say, that's not really going to work. We have to go through this process of reading every day, talking about it with our friends over coffee. Every day. Baking it into our soul. Such that when we're fortunate enough to have that experience of knowing ourselves, ultimately turning ourselves around from our physical senses, know ourselves as mind, and we can take that training with us to even the most potentially overwhelming experience, literally the highest, most blissful experience possible. Even then, we take that way of being with us. What a fascinating way of being that would be. Is that Socrates' way of being? Is that our most natural way of being? Our most excellent way of being? Is that virtue? Lots and lots of questions to take with us as we jump into the text. Thank you so much for joining me, anyone watching. Let's take it into the text. So, I've turned on my light. And let's jump into the text. Here we are. All right, so this is the dialectic on... So this is the dialectic that Meno had after Anytos was a dick and left and stormed out. Didn't like the idea that it mustn't be able to teach virtue if there are no teachers out there, and there are no teachers. And we know this. How many teachers are teaching us to experience our mind itself, pure knowledge, the realm of being, where all of the virtues are? Zero, I think. At least through the logos and dialectic. And how many people are teaching us to go beyond it so we can have all of the individual virtues and have the excellence of ourselves, or know thyself? If there are no teachers, then how can you say it can be taught? Anytos didn't like that. He threatened Socrates. Oh, you be careful. People are going to kill you for that. They'll kill you as a sorcerer. And they did. But after that, Meno was able to go through the dialectic in a much more friendly way, we could say. Open-minded way, maybe. And accordingly, this is the conclusion. Accordingly, then, in regards to correctness of action, true opinion is no worse of a guide than phronesis. We are still wondering about what exactly phronesis is, because it's central. We need it if we want virtue. And I want my microphone to have the virtue of a microphone and not fall over. I'll fix it. There we go. It's got to do a whole 180 spin. So what the heck is phronesis? And also, true opinion is no worse of a guide than Phronesis, and while considering what the nature of virtue is, we were saying that only Phronesis guides human affairs rightly, but we were neglecting what we just now see. And accordingly, true opinion that we are getting from Socrates, listening to this conversation, lucky us that these dialectics, these dialogues survived many times the fucking ignorance of stupid human beings, slaves to their pathologos, have tried to burn these sorts of things. Literally, they burnt down the academy, burnt down the libraries of Alexandria several times, murdered anyone doing philosophy, murdered anyone actually carrying what they replaced philosophy with, the Bible. You couldn't even read that. They'd kill you if you had a book. It's all about enslaving and manipulating human beings. That's the end goal for people who are stuck in the physical world. People who haven't learnt to love learning, or learnt to become curious, or started asking these sorts of questions. Surely life shouldn't be about manipulating people so you can exploit them, extract their value for profit. Right? That doesn't help anything. But we have it, and we're very grateful for Juan Balboa, who has learnt to translate the actual Greek. So we are very, very fortunate where we are, that we have what we need to overcome our ignorance, save humanity from extinction, and more importantly, do our own individual work of mastering this art of the dialectic so we can know ourselves. And as that knowledge is beyond the physical world, it's a kind of learning and knowledge or education, training, kind of nurture that we can take with us. Therefore, it's the sort of rational thing to do. It would be irrational to spend your life just figuring out how to fuck with people so you can hoard all the wealth, knowing you're gonna die. The amount of time that we live in this life compared to eternity is, well, very, very small, obviously. So that's stupid. So this is the rational way of being human. So what we would say in midwifery book, becoming mature. Becoming rational, entering the human race, all those sorts of things. So Meno says that is likely. He's following along. Hooray for him.
He better not.
Well, accordingly then, right opinion is no less useful or beneficial than knowledge. In such a way indeed, O Socrates, that the one who has knowledge would always hit the mark, while the one who has right opinion would hit the mark sometimes, but other times not. It's not a bad response. If you're a mechanic and you don't understand how an engine works, but you have fixed a Mazda engine with a broken gas stick and a Toyota engine with a broken carburetor, then if anybody comes in with those specific car models with those specific problems, you'll hit the mark because you're just copying what your teacher has told you or shown you. This kind of makes sense, right? But then any other car or any other problem, you'll be in trouble. Socrates responds, what do you mean? Well, not the one who always has right opinion, always hit the mark. For as long as they opine correctly. So you would say, well, actually, yeah, you don't have the right opinion of a Nissan. I'm saying it weird. Nissan? I think in Australia we call it a Nissan, but everyone else they call it Nissan. Ferrari. You don't have the right opinion on how to fix a Ferrari's magma chamber. That's not even a thing. I tried to think of a car sounding word and magma was way off. Beyond carburetor and gasket. That's as far as That's as far as my right opinions about cars go. But he's saying, well, then you don't actually have the right opinion in that particular instance. It is manifest to me that it is necessary. So I wonder, Socrates, that it has to be this way. So it's necessary that you will always hit the mark so long as you actually have the right opinion. So you better be reading a lot every day in this channel. Good for you. Hooray.
Pour much. I'm cute. Like a cutie pie.
That guy. So why then, Socrates, is knowledge much more honored than right opinion? What accounts for the difference? Socrates says, well, you know why you're wondering about that? Because you have not thought about the divine images of Daedalus. And he talks about how if he was an artist and he had very beautiful works of art, and you'd be very happy to have acquired one of those works of art, like one of the great statues. But if the statue ran away, turn it up a bit. That's better. If the statue ran away, you wouldn't be so happy. So the difference is, cough button. Still a little bit under the weather. Difference is, they're not bound. They're not really worth much until they're bound. And a certain logos, a certain reasoning into causes, is what binds you to right opinions. This is key because if you're the sort of person who's come across this channel, you probably had a lot of suggestions in your YouTube and Instagram and TikTok algorithms of people who probably appeal to you. You like listening to them and you think they're very smart and clever and insightful, and they seem like kinder people and nicer people and maybe even more beautiful people. They shine with a radiance that seems to be very different from even, physically beautiful people. It draws you in. Well, you could ask yourself that question. Are these people appealing and better human beings than other people because they spend their time reasoning about causes of things? The causes of political problems? The causes of our physical world? Maybe they're scientists. Good scientists, not charlatans. Wanting to understand the cause of the world we live in, the cause of the problems we face. What would be the causes and principles of, well, how would we turn an understanding or a certain reasoning about causes into principles that we can apply universally? So we're not hypocrites. One rule for you, one rule for me, says the Republicans or the capitalists or the fascists or the Nazis. That's not a principle. The leopard ate my face party. People who vote for fascists like Trump and then get upset. Well, he's doing all this criminal stuff to me. I thought he would just do it to the people I don't like. The face-eating leopard party is eating my face. So what would it be like to have actual principles that are causal of our physical world? Therefore, they are universal. They apply universally. They're always going to be true. So they're not going to be a hypocrite. Therefore, we should demand of our leaders and politicians that they apply a certain reasoning into causes and use that understanding and, reasoning, the nailing down, reasoning, understanding of causes as principles to always use for everyone. So no division, no genocide, no concentration camps in El Salvador, none of that shit, because you're using a certain reasoning into causes and using that understanding of causes that are more primary than the physical world as principles. These things are beneficial because they are good, and they're always good. So, think about that when you're watching your favorite TikToker or content creator and wonder, is that what makes them cool? Is that what makes them insightful? Is that what makes them a good person? Is that what makes them beautiful? Is that what makes you go,
The more holes, the better.
So they're not worth, your right opinions are good guides, but they're not worth as much until they are bound by reasoning into causes. But this, my companion Meno, is recollection. Ooh. So, as was previously agreed by us. So what was recollection? Recollection was our understanding of what true learning is. Learning is remembering or recollection. I just turned down my light. I gotta get better lights. I look so pasty all the time. So recollection is what real learning is. That's why our dialectics are applied to being. You're not trying to apply a dialectic to understand how many grains of rice there are in China. You want to know what beauty is itself, and justice is itself, and shape and color are themselves prior to our physical world. Therefore, reasoning logos into causes also leads us to, or is a kind of remembering and awakens our remembering. After they are bound, they become knowledge, and at that time they steadfastly abide. Knowledge abides when nailed down through reasoning into causes. And surely then, because of this knowledge is more honored than right opinion, and knowledge differs from right opinion by being bound. By Zeus, says Meno, it is likely to be in such a way. So now I'm back and I light up a little bit. And I certainly do not speak as one who knows. But by way of comparison. However, there is a difference between right opinion and knowledge, and I do not at all infer this by comparison. But if indeed there is anything I would say I know, since there are very few things Socrates says he knows about, this one I will include among those which I know. So what's the difference? Well, the thing that he said he is able to understand by way of comparison, but not by knowledge, was, why is one more honored? Why do people honor or value knowledge more than right opinion? That's comparison. It's not knowledge. What does that mean? Do you remember how people act in the everyday world? No, you can't remember that. It can happen, you can see it, and you can make comparisons in the physical world. You can compare things in the physical world with your physical senses. But you can't remember who your friend's favorite Pokemon is. You have to go out and observe that. However, statements about knowledge itself and how it differs from right opinion, that can actually be something you know. So we're really seeing the difference between the two realms of reality, one that can be an object of knowledge, and one that is just something that you infer through comparison, sense perception. One is about what people value, and one is about the truth of the levels of reality and the levels of cognition. And let's move my camera forward a little bit. I'm going to have to redo my whole setup here because I got this stake right between my legs under this table, keeping it up. I've got a long table. This is a statement I'm making by way of comparison. I'm comparing what it would be like to sit comfortably. Oh no, you know what I can do? First I can pause the recording for a second. And so one statement Socrates can make by way of comparison, one statement he can make as knowledge. Therefore, it's not true that Socrates is wise because he knows nothing. Grandma on Facebook. You idiot. This is what I think of you, Gran.
If you don't understand this, you're either being intentionally obtuse because you want to be mad at something and you just don't know what you're supposed to be mad at, so you are the NPC chip meme, or you're really stupid.
You're really stupid. And but the difference is so we can wonder about so maybe I shouldn't have given everything away. We can wonder about what Socrates says is done by way of comparison and what is done by way of knowledge. What then? Is the following not correct? That when true opinion guides, it is in no way inferior than knowledge into bringing into completion the purpose, the aim, the business, the function of each and every work and deed. Now that we saw last time ties in with the earlier section where he's... Bring it up. Blessedness is the key word that our translator uses for daemon. If the soul is guided by phronesis, everything she attempts or endures ends in dun dun dun. Blessedness, or not the word. The word is to be the good daemon. Good daemon. So we're learning about where we end up. If we function through virtue, which is the soul being guided by mindfulness, coordinated with intellect, which is the making use of all of the individual virtues or individual excellences, like keeping your cool or sound-mindedness, quickness in learning. No, not quickness. We cross that out. Good learning, to learn well, keeping your cool. Good learning, memory, magnificence, greatness, aiming to be your best, shooting for the moon. Hey, spammer, you're not shooting for the moon. Spammer in chat, you can do better. Be magnificent. Aim for your highest goals. Stick around and learn this shit. If you are a real person, and I doubt that you are. So we will block this person. Spam bot. So, sound-mindedness or keeping your cool. Justice, courage, good learning, memory, greatness. You have to apply it. You don't chase the armory on your own. That's rash. That's rash. But you have to act coordinated with your intellect, but guided by that state of phronesis. That's our goal. No, that's our guide. The end goal would be if we do live in that way, we will be a good daemon ourselves. if we are guided by the opposite, what we would call the pathologos, we would be like most people, and we would end up being like the kakadaemon. Function negatively. Cold things make things cold. Pathologos things make things bad. So we saw that. So that's the idea of the significance of living a virtuous life. Whatever you do, if you do your best to act in this way, you'll get there. Which is a big ask. You'll only reach your goal to be the good daemon if you already have the highest level of enlightenment. You're at the state of phronesis. Functioning through it, it's not the end. Making use of your virtues, coordinated with intellect, guided by phronesis. That's a big ask. We're not there yet. But fortunately, we have this one, which is this dialectic here at the end, towards the end. Therefore, true opinion also guides rightly as phronesis does. Therefore, therefore, we will also reach our highest goal to be as a good daemon, to show the self and function through the self in a way that benefits others, as a daemon does, and ourselves, of course, in a way that's baked into our soul. That'll be our immortal, eternal nature. Even through right opinion. Here we go. True opinion guides, it is no way inferior than knowledge into bringing into completion the aim and function of each and every word and deed. So that, to know what that means, we have to tie it back into we have to stitch it together with that other section in the text. That's reading. That's the puzzle solving part of it. That's finding the hidden gem in one part of the mansion and using it to unlock the door in that part of the mansion where there is missing a gem in the eye of the painting, like in a video game or something. This is the archetype. This is real reading. Maybe if I just sit lower like this, then I don't have to change. Okay, don't get distracted by my table. Actually, I'll think about that later. You again appear to be speaking the truth, says Meno, who is at the level of appearance and doesn't know the truth. But we can laugh. Accordingly then, right opinion will be no way inferior nor less beneficial than knowledge in every aim and every functioning that we do, nor will the one who has right opinion rather than knowledge. What? Oh, right. So neither will we ourselves as a person be less beneficial. And certainly it was agreed by us that a person who is good is indeed beneficial, right? Yes. Now then, seeing that it is not only through knowledge, but also through right opinion that people can be good and beneficial to their cities. So, ultimately it's for ourselves, but also we'll be able to benefit our cities well, which means we should do our best to encourage everyone to act in this way and demand it of our rulers or leaders or politicians. Anyone who doesn't have the right opinion or actual phronesis, nous, and dialectic under their belts, anyone who doesn't have that shouldn't be leading anything. They can walk our dogs. The leaders that we demand of this standard will be benefiting us by creating the material conditions so that we all can be reading this every day. If we were rational. So good and beneficial to themselves and to their cities, if indeed they can be. But that neither of these, neither knowledge nor true opinion, arise naturally in human beings since they are acquired. That's the baby tower thing. And does it appear to you that they arise naturally? No. So then, if it is not so then, is it not so? It's fucking... Sorry, I shouldn't swear. Sometimes it annoys me that there is a single word in Greek and the translation is it not so then? Why don't we just say this thing? Anyway, that they do not arise naturally, neither can people be naturally good. If it does not arise naturally, you're not born knowing everything. You're not born at this level. Then it was teachable. Has to be teachable then. Didn't we opine, opinion, that if virtue was phronesis, then it was teachable? Meno says yes. And we got mad. We said to that,
Too stupid to understand and also refusing to understand. Why not both, right?
oh, I must have knocked something. And I've got to fix my monitor. There we go. Yeah, fixed. So we say to the people, so we say to Meno, who says, yeah, phronesis would be teachable. We say to him,
Too stupid to understand
and we say to him,
Do a poggers.
you should do a poggers. Because that's wrong. Maybe? If it were teachable, then it would be phronesis, right? Very much so. And if on the other hand there were indeed teachers, then it might be teachable. Whereas if there were no teachers, then it's not teachable. Does it make sense? Didn't we just conclude it? Didn't we conclude earlier that it was phronesis? Yeah. And then it should be teachable? Yeah. But if it's no teachers, it's not teachable. Yeah. Therefore, rationally speaking, is not phronesis. So something's wrong. Meno hasn't followed the conversation the way we have been. Meno can do better. But didn't we agree there were no teachers of... of self? That's one of those turning points in the text. That changes everything. And therefore, if you are reading a version of translation of Meno or any Platonic text that does not translate this word here, auto, A-U-T-O-U, which is Greek for self, then you can't play. You can't get the gem that you have to put into the place that opens the door that gets you to the next room where the zombies are. No, where the treasure is. We have to remind ourselves of, because one of the difficulties in waking human beings up to this quest, which is important for not just themselves, but for our cities. Don't you want to live in a world that isn't terrible? Well, you can only do that in this game. One of the difficulties in sharing our work, our play, our game, the human game, is that no one really understands what philosophy is. Because we've been lied to. For a long, 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 long time. Yeah, so it's people, oh, I've read Plato. Oh, no, not really. Which is mean. Like if you've come across someone who's said, oh, I've read Plato, that's fantastic. Like, oh, we can talk about stuff. But you have to go through the work of saying, well, you weren't really reading Plato. And you got to hope they don't get pissed. What do you mean I spend so much money? And I feel like I can talk about it. I can give great speeches. I'm a lecturer. I've got tenureship, don't you know? Which is what Meno said. Let's get back. I still. No. Speeches? Here we go, page 15. I am benumbed. Both my soul and my mouth are numb, and I do not know how to answer you. Even though I've spoken countless times, I have tenureship, I'm a professor of philosophy, I'm a psychotherapeutic person, I got my own practice. I have my own podcast even. I'm friends with Joe Rogan even. I've spoken many times and made many speeches in front of many, and very good speeches about virtue, as they indeed appear to myself. But now I can't in any way say what it is. So what am I going to do? Well, what do the grifters do when they get called out on those awesome YouTube channels that like debunk the grifters? Or I love those channels. I love those ones. They get pissed. They make it personal. They make it, their pathologos comes in and they act like a tyrant like their parents. Or a petty child like either of the two pathologos roles. And they say shit like this. Hey, you better not leave your town where they look after you because I'm going to get you and I'm going to beat you up and I'm going to fight you. You'll be well advised not to travel abroad nor away from your hometown, for if you did such things as a stranger in another city, you would be quickly driven away as a sorcerer. That's the crummy reaction, the normal, or the currently regular reaction to this is more coffee. To finding out that you're not doing philosophy. That you, even though you've given many speeches, or you can speak well about it, or you're considered an expert, or you can think very well and you're very, very clever and all that sort of stuff. So, don't be like Meno, don't get butthurt. But it is a difficulty we have to point out because we're not putting people down. We're not trying to make people feel bad about themselves. We're trying to do the exact opposite. We're trying to help people feel the best about themselves through an understanding and remembering and beyond remembering of themselves. Their self. But you have to sacrifice your images that you are tied to. And there are certain kinds of beliefs that bind us to ignorance when we identify with them. We don't just say, oh, I have this belief. I am a professor, or I am an expert, or I am a Catholic, or whatever it is. It's not. It's a belief. It's an image. Don't get stuck on it. If you are much, 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 much greater and more transcendent than those transitory beliefs and opinions. So we gotta get good at making that case, I suppose. So we don't want people to be like Meno or like Anitos, who actually did succeed in getting Socrates killed for pointing out he was wrong about something. Oh, like Trump's doing. Killing or sending to Ecuadorian prison camps or concentration camps or Guantanamo Bay people who have different opinions than him. Fucking terrible shit. And he's not the only one doing it out there. We need to recognize it, understand it, call it out, make it as obvious as day. Just like, oh, you see LeBron James. Oh, that's LeBron James. You see Shaq. Oh, that's Shaq. You can't miss him. He's a giant of a person. Oh, you're an Anitos. Oh, you're a Meno. But I'm running for president. What are you, crazy? No one, not one person on our planet would vote for you because it's so obvious. You're a 7-foot tall mountain of a man, Shaq. You can't hide. But I wear these glasses sometimes. So that's the point. So we got to point that out. Altos, this is real philosophy. It differs from what we've been taught. And hey, I paid money to learn philosophy at college. I got scammed too, so, you know. But it's neat. You don't have to pay money. Everyone can play. This is free. I've got 1 million episodes on YouTube now. I mean, I'm not the most charming person in the world, but Pierre Grimes has a whole bunch. Google PRS. They're awesome. PRS, Pierre Grimes. Whole bunch, like 120 lectures. You can find them on the internet. Anyway. We want to make it fun for people to realize that, hey, this is true philosophy. And one of the great betrayals, which is an essay that Pierre Grimes wrote, is not translating Altos as self. And of course, we can wonder about why that is. If the pathologos fundamentally blocks you from the self-logos, and the further towards the highest goal, the more it's going to come in to block you. And what's the highest goal? Knowing the self. Not just knowing the self, as we saw, to be able to function through it as the good daemon. So we can wonder about why there has been such a rejection and retaliation to the self. And we can wonder if it mirrors our culture, our barbaric, stupid fucking culture right now as well. So, but we can wonder about it, but it's important to recognize that it's there so we can invite people to play. Accordingly then, we have agreed that self is neither teachable nor phronesis. Or very much so. But we certainly agreed that self was indeed good. The self is functioning at different levels here, of course. Self as the subject, virtue. Self as the honorific, real virtue and being. And self as the one self. So you can do the twist and do the second twist. Realize Tyler Durden wasn't real. Realize there's something else happening. To use Fight Club as the analogy. For solving a puzzle where there's a twist and then a second twist. As all good films are. Anyway, you get it. You get it. You're all smart here. You're all...
That's weird that you think that.
Okay, I don't think you're weird. I think you're all great. I think...
You've been a bad little girl and you're...
No,
I'm cute. Like, it's cutie pie.
I think you're all cutie pies. Oh. Okay, let's keep going. Accordingly then, we agreed that self was neither teacher... Yeah, read that. But didn't we agree? We certainly agreed that self was good. Oh, we haven't read this yet. Okay, I'm going to slow down a bit. That was all recap. This is where we're up to. So didn't we agree that self was neither teachable? Let's highlight self. Work on my table later. Self was neither teachable nor phronesis. But we certainly agreed that self was good, right? And as we've been talking about, we can recognize the twist, the good self. But that which is beneficial is good. Sorry. But that which is beneficial and good is that which guides rightly.
Well,
Hooray.
you're doing your best. Okay, so sorry, Ben. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Example of this.
Right. Guide rightly. So if you want to be good and you want to benefit, you are guiding rightly. Does the daemon solve your problems? No, but it gives you the most epic movies, stories with the levels of twists that you can solve that will awaken you to your problems, to free yourself from the chains of your pathologos that binds you to ignorance, binds you to your repeating cycles of problems. Dreams do that for you, and it will point out high states that you've been in that you've missed. Can facilitate enlightenment experiences. Give you puzzles about those experiences. Guide your reading, as we've seen already in this podcast. So the daemon, or Dream Master, maybe, doesn't solve the problems for you, but will guide you rightly. And that's beneficial, which is good. And from one who is good. Cough button. There we go. Very much so. What does it mean to be good then? Something about guiding rightly. Does that tie in with our puzzle about the daemon earlier? Yes. What do you say, Arun?
He better not.
Imagine people changing their positions and improving for the better.
This is what it would be. Improving for the better. But only these two beings indeed, true opinion and knowledge, guide rightly. Huh. Two beings. Now that's an interesting word. Altos. Interesting. So that's interesting because, well, normally we consider opinion to be of the physical, of the world of becoming. So it's curious that he's calling opinion. Oh, okay. True opinion. There we go. So true opinion is a truly existing being. So you can look at it that way, as in, while being at the level of opinion isn't at the level of being, but as an aspect of reality, as a principle or a condition of reality, that has to truly exist for there to be species like humans who awaken to that level of cognition in China and in California and all the way over in Australia. So while opinions are not being itself, they can be about being, but the principle of opinion itself is one of the beings, and another being, of course, is knowledge. That one's much easier to make sense of. So these two beings only guide rightly, which if possessed by a human being, then they will guide rightly. So we want the right opinions. We get from Socrates, and from Pierre Grimes, and from our Dream Master, and those are the three. Those are the big three. I love that. I think that's awesome. That's so neat. Like you don't have to. One of the problems being human and being on a quest to discover the nature of ourselves and the reality we're in and our role in that reality is, where do you look? You could spend your whole life looking in the fucking Bible or something, and you'll never find the answers because it's horseshit. It's literally like dozens and dozens of individual people thousands of years ago, mistranslated over centuries. And all those people are all at various levels of ignorance and various levels of, I guess, growth as well. But who knows? And the ones that were picked were by the authority figures, the ecumenical council. And they just picked texts that support their own fucking pathologos shit. And then the translators, like, even translators translating this got it wrong for centuries. So where do you look? And that sucks for people. People trying their best to be good and wise and be godlike, but happen to be born in a Mormon family and they're trying to get that from Joseph Smith's grift. If you don't know the Joseph Smith grift, check out that South Park episode on Mormonism. It presents it in a fun, easy to understand way. Or any crazy cult, who cares? I'm not picking favorites. It's all at the level of belief. Understanding is for everyone. Everyone plays. Everyone, no one gets excluded. Doesn't matter where you were raised. It's non-exclusive. But there is a cover charge. You can't be a dog. You can't be blindly loyal to what you grew up with, like a dog is. That's why they called the Nazis dogs. You can't get into a club if you're going to act like a Nazi. You can't be blindly loyal to whatever religion or opinions or beliefs you grew up with. Thumbs up. But that's just maturity, integrity. Oh, and if you are, and of course you are going to be, that's why we do midwifery. That's why we do dream analysis. To find what prevents us from letting go of what's false to discover our best selves, our highest happiness, our ability to gather true opinions and knowledge so that we can guide ourselves and others rightly. Benefit. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win-win-win.
Sorry, it's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win. I've been looking at chaos pads. They seem to be really old now. Haven't been updated. Anyway, if you're a engineer or a music person, you know what a chaos pad is. Maybe you've heard of it. Because there's only so much I can do with my super basic cobbled together soundboard that I can do this. Here's normal.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
This is Joe Rogan not eating a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
And this is him not eating a monkey in a, what do they call those memes? Those deep fried not eating a monkey. Well, that's too deep fried.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey.
There's only two options. One, you're wrong. But now you always get to the right about
Alright. I promise, as soon as I have more money, I'm going to upgrade my soundboard. And it's going to be super fun and interesting and cool. Not that anyone is watching for that, but I think it'll be fun for me. It'll help me to guide you rightly. There we go. There we go. Okay, let's just adjust something on my screen. Here we go. For those that come to be by providence, do not come to be by human guidance. All right. This is the first time we've heard the word providence. This is key. So, in terms of the 3 levels of self beyond where we're at as humans, we're at the level of the 4th hypothesis. You don't have to understand what the 9 hypotheses are, but that's what Parmenides used in the Parmenides to outline the different stages of development. And group thinking is the 4th hypothesis, which is why we're ruled by religious groups and political groups, and all of those are ultimately ruled by the pathologos, which is an allegiance to that group loyalty from our childhood. The next level up is waking up to the logos. That's what we're doing. That's the kind of reasoning that will nail down right opinions and knowledge, of course. And that 3rd hypothesis is characterized by, it's a level of self, first of all, logos and providence. Because it's through logos that the daemon and Socrates and Pierre and truth, it's through the logos and dialectic, it's through the rational structure of the logos and dialectic that providence is extended, which is why when we apply the dialectic to our dreams, we gain divine benefit, divine guidance, which is why I was loosely gesturing at the idea that the good daemon might also be our dream master. So we've been talking a lot about the logos and dialectic all the way up to here, but now he drops on us the providence bomb. Dun dun dun. So let's highlight providence. It's providence. So why is he dropping providence? And we're almost finished the book and he drops providence on our asses. That's crazy. You're crazy, Socrates. You're crazy, crazy man. To you I say...
Unbelievable sluts these days.
That's what I say, Socrates. You're unbelievable slut these days, Socrates. And if you are guided rightly by providence, it's not by... Sorry, let's read that again. For those that come to be guided rightly by providence do not come to be from human guidance. But when a human being guides according to that which is right, then it is according to these true beings. These 2 beings. True opinion and knowledge. Alright, so we can keep the providence of our Dream Master. We can keep the providence of the symmetrical logos that unfolds in each moment in a way that's precise but profound, all-pervasive but personally directed, keeping every moment coordinated with the next, giving us this illusion of movement like a movie, frame by frame. We can keep that providence. But if humans guide, if we have a teacher or we're reading a book written by someone or reviewing a dialogue had by Socrates, he is doing so by true opinion and knowledge. It appears to Meno to be that way. Well, if it appears to Meno, then who cares? Because Meno
Freaks.
is a freak. Is it not the case then that... That's not fair, but close enough. Is it not the case then that seeing that... Is it not the case then? Instead of complaining about these translation things I don't like, I should do my own one day. All I'll do is just take the Balboa translation and put phronesis instead of mindfulness and find a way of getting this one word. Is it not the case then? Is it not the case then? It's like 6 syllables for one word. See the one word underneath? That's why I'm annoyed. But it sucks saying, anyway. Seeing that excellence is not teachable, either because you understood what we said about phronesis, unlike Meno, or you accepted the much, much simpler dialectic that we was directed at any toast, that if it was teachable, there'd be teachers, and there ain't teachers out there, my friend. So is it not the case then that excellence is not teachable? Then we can no longer take self to be knowledge. Yay.
Okay, go ahead.
We say yay because that was the earlier argument where if learning is remembering, and you can remember enlightenment, that's what learning is supposed to be for, enlightenment. What the Taoists call enlightenment, let's say that. Second hypothesis, ousia, being. And that's the object of knowledge, which is why Socrates says there are some things he knows, some things he makes not by knowledge, but by comparison. Oh, and knowing the difference is what makes him wisest. Grandma on Facebook. Grandma?
We're gonna engage in dishonesty?
Let's not engage in dishonesty, Grandma. So we asked before, hey Meno, did we say that phronesis is teachable? Oh yeah, we did. Meno.
Don't be disgusting.
Don't be disgusting, Meno. But then, by the way, let's go through and remind, hey, didn't we say that excellence is not teachable, otherwise there'd be teachers? Oh yeah, we did say that. Therefore, virtue can't be knowledge. It's not teachable, can't be knowledge. Therefore, ara, one of the two good and useful beings has been excluded. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Let's think about that for a second. And so knowledge cannot be guiding in political affairs. Why? Let's think this through. Okay, what guides well? True opinion and knowledge. But excellence isn't teachable. What does that mean? What? I'm really confused here. There are two beings that guide human affairs rightly. True opinion, knowledge, and providence is on the side. But virtue also guides things rightly, because virtue is being your highest good self, and that which is good benefits, and that which is benefiting is which is guiding rightly. Therefore, virtue guides rightly, true opinion and knowledge guide rightly, but knowledge is teachable, but virtue isn't teachable. Huh? So knowledge isn't enough. You could say, well, knowledge can guide rightly, virtue can guide rightly, phronesis, and whatever else is involved, maybe aporia. Your opinions can guide rightly. Let's keep reading, and I am really stuck, puzzled on this. But that's okay. That's aporia. That's the point. You look to get puzzled. You want to get puzzled. You can't find the gem in the Resident Evil mansion and put it in the statue to open the place to find the T-virus if you don't care. You can't discover the self if you don't care. If you're already given up, you already think you know everything. You're already content with being a grifter. You're already content with being a Catholic or some bullshit. Mormon. Whatever. Pick one. I'm not playing favorites. Anything at the level of certainty in ignorance, certainty in belief, and not this. And let's go back. This is always Okay. Be made more virile, I think was the virile. Here we go. Way back in page 26. Meno said, hang on a second. Meno said way back in 26, why bother learning anything because, oh wait. Excuse me. Hey, why bother learning anything? Because if you know it already, then let's find it. Okay, I can't find where it starts. Amino has the question, well, why learn anything? Because you either know it already, in which case you don't have to learn it. But if you don't know it, how do you know what to look for? How would you recognize it? So it's not worth learning it if you don't know it. And Socrates is like, whoa, here's another thing that I know. No, I'm not sure if he says no. Here, let's read this. I would contend in every way about the following, as far as I am able, in both word and deed. I will always go to bat for this, in my words and my actions. We will be better, more courageous, less idle, if we think that we must search for that which one does not know, rather than thinking it's not possible to discover that which we do not know, nor must we search. So, if you don't know it, look for it. You'll always be made better. Here he is guiding us. This is a demonstration of what we're defining. If excellence is something tied to the goods, well, being our most good self, which might even be the good self itself, and the good has to benefit in the highest way, and benefit is guiding rightly, then here is an example of being guided. You will always be made better, beneficial, through the guidance of Socrates here saying, in his word and deed, he will always guide you to seek for that which you do not know rather than think you can't know it. So anyone who says, you can't know what happens when you die, you can't know the nature of God, you can't know how the universe came to be, you can't know the true nature of self, you can't know how to solve problems, you can't know the meaning of dreams, fuck you and 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 fuck you, says Socrates, not me. I'm just reading Socrates. Socrates says...
Disgusting. I'm so disgusted.
Disgusting. So disgusted. You will always be made better if you seek for that which you know. And secondarily, what the heck are you talking about? I've always been puzzled by those people. Not only because the most ignorant people I've ever met are the ones that say you can't know things, but yeah, the idiots say that. Like, the dumbest people say that. So that got me wondering, but also, you don't know what is knowable? I've never really understood why people who don't know things would say, oh, you can't know that. Oh, no shit. I just saw a YouTube video recently. It was hilarious. It was one of those YouTube videos that I just mentioned earlier that I really like. The like skeptical takedown or whatever it is, or the decoding gurus is one of those ones. There's one I just found. Mr. Science Guy Explains or something. Anyway, he really likes taking down these grifters, these right-wing fascist grifters who are paid by billionaires to lie to people to make them ignorant on Joe Rogan's podcast and Fox News and brainwashing evil propaganda networks like that. To sound smart, to manipulate people to act against their best interests, to accept capitalism and fascism and sexism and racism, because these are all tools for hurting people to make money, which is the exact opposite of the good self, the opposite of benefit, and opposite of guiding rightly. Anyway, on one particular episode, there was a guy. Oh no, the interviewer himself was like one of the worst propagandists, sold his soul to fascists, Pierce someone. Anyway, some fascist talking head. And he was getting mad at the scientist. And he said, "What happened before the Big Bang? You don't know it, and therefore it must be my Christian God." I don't know if he believes that or if he's just pandering to his audience. And the scientist said, "Just because you don't know something doesn't mean you can't know something. That's what science is, to discover things we have yet to know." And the fascist propagandist got mad. I don't know if it was performative, but in the absence of actual understanding, the performance of their father, seeming like the knower, is what they appeal to. Which is why people think Trump is smart. He's not at all in any way, but he's similar enough to the parents of that culture, that being a crybaby or being a racist seems like knowledge, seems like knowing for people who haven't awoken to the logos, to our job. So here he is getting angry at the scientist, and he said, "Well, if you don't know something, then surely you can't know something." And that's a comical expression of this thing that I've always wondered about. People saying you can't know this and that just because they don't know it. Or more honestly, because their mum and dad don't know it and they're still tied to their ignorance. They're pathologos. A bit of a tangent, but just because you don't know it doesn't mean you can't know it, and Socrates will always guide you to seek that which you don't currently know. Because you will be made better, more courageous, and less bad by doing so. So that's a demonstration of using something to guide rightly. So is that a demonstration of virtue? You will guide in word and deed, that always. To seek that which you don't know, do you have to be open and curious? Can we tie aporia or being stung in with that as well? Maybe. So this is what we do when we read. Especially towards the end, there'll be certain key phrases that tie back in with the beginning. You need to tie it all together, like sew it together. Bring the green gem from this part of the mansion over here. Bring the crocodile key over there. Bring the soul of the Dark King to there, and you put it all together to solve the video game. Analogy. Okay, and so tying together the pieces of the text is part of reading. And yeah, so in here we are puzzled about this statement here. Other than providence, if it's human guidance, it's either by true opinion or knowledge. But didn't we say that virtue is not teachable? Yes. And we can't say that virtue is knowledge or self is knowledge. Accordingly, then, one of the true and useful beings has been excluded. Knowledge can't be guiding in political affairs. Well, we know that. Accordingly, then, Meno says it doesn't appear to me. Well, fine. Then, it was not by some kind of wisdom. Now, is that the first time we've seen Sophia? Let's copy. Copy. And paste. First time we've got providence. Let's see if it's the first time we've got... No, we've got... No. Polycrates, acquired by the wisdom and management of self. Wisdom and virtue is rightly setting your house in order, or your soul in order. This other man who apparently was wise. Maybe? Protagoras. Kings and great men who are surpassing in wisdom. Famous for the... So it seems like all of the references of wisdom... No, wisdom is one of the virtues along with courage and temperance, of course. But other than that, the only other references to wisdom in the text have been speculation about individuals. Which is wild because here we are saying it's not by wisdom that people guide politics well. Which means even though we have... So this is part of the sewing together. We have seen wisdom mentioned. Actually, we'll have to look at all the... We've seen... Yeah. Polycrates supposedly had wisdom because he was managing well. So the people that we are talking about as appearing wise, Anytos and Meno and Socrates playing along maybe, said, hey, this guy's wise, right? Polycrates. And that's where we are now. And this other guy who was he? This other dude, Clephontos. When it came to wisdom in which he was wise, he was made no better than his neighbors. Right, his son, yeah. So this other guy who apparently was wise but couldn't make his son wise. Protagoras. Another guy who supposedly was wise but yeah, apparently can't teach others. He claims like here is the shoe salesman who claims to fix shoes, the shoe repair guy. These teachers don't seem to make people wise, but they're not run out of town for some reason. The sophists, the people who claim to be experts, claim to be philosophers, claim to be gurus. Right, so here is Anytos desiring the kind of wisdom and virtue. Meno describing courage, temperance, and wisdom and greatness as virtue. A myth about people who have wisdom. We would call them holy. Oh, if you do actually get wisdom, you'll be called a holy hero. And the only other reference to wisdom so far has been page 1. Oh, that's neat. We can tie it all the way into the first page. So we've got all of these humans who have appeared to be wise but aren't, because they can't teach their sons or they can't teach their students. Meno saying, oh, by the way, wisdom is one of the virtues. We have this myth, Socrates saying, hey, by the way, if you do actually gain wisdom, you'll be recognized as one of the holy or divine heroes. We've been talking about this is the hero's journey. This is the archetype. This is the video game, but the real thing. The divine hero. And so it's a virtue. It makes you a divine hero. People claim to have it and people appear to have it, but they don't, so it seems. And all the way back to the first thing Socrates says, Meno says, hey, can you teach virtue? Or is it acquired by practice or by training or by nature? Socrates says, well, in the past, the Thessalians were famous and admired by the Hellenes for their horsemanship and riches. But now it appears to me they're also famous for their wisdom. So this whole culture seems to be famous for their wisdom. So we've tied it to virtue. We've tied the real achievement of wisdom to being a divine hero. But the only other references in the text to wisdom have been about people who are claiming or appearing to be it, but don't seem to really be it. That's tying the text together. So, while providence is just dropped, actually, let's just check, see if providence comes up anywhere else. Just copy that, paste it there, and nope. How about here? Nope. Nope. So yeah, first time we've dropped providence on our butts, which might be significant. If it's dropped once, it's the most significant thing in the text. The good self is mentioned once in the Republic. Know thyself in Parmenides. And so on. So, is that significant? Well, we've seen that you'll be divine hero with wisdom. Providence is from the divine. And all of the human beings don't actually have wisdom. So there's significant correlation between providence and wisdom. Oh, we are finding puzzles today. Hooray. All right, so accordingly then, it was not by some sort of wisdom, nor by being wise, that such people, such as both Themistocles and those who Anytos was mentioning. Here we go. We're getting sort of verification or some guide. We are getting guidance of that puzzle we were just exploring. Regarding our cities, so these people who we thought were wise because they're such great politicians or whatever, and they didn't actually have wisdom or being wise so wisdom has to be tied to knowledge, nailed down also so it doesn't run away like that statue, right? And for which reason they were not able to make others the kind of people that they themselves were. So it wasn't wisdom that Trump was doing his thing or whatever. Or even supposed good people, good rulers, good guiders. Because obviously, if you have the wisdom to guide yourself correctly, to be a good daemon, to be the good self, eternally, forever, beyond this life, of course, then those are the people you'd want to elect to rule everyone. You want the best ruler of the football team to be the captain. Clearly. So hey, these people who we consider to be wise are the models of wisdom because they can rule well. They didn't have wisdom, for which reason they were not able to make others like themselves. The true wisdom would be a kind of guidance that could make you like Socrates. Likeness. The good self benefits to make others the good self. The daemon would... So, which is interesting because if the daemon is the divine guidance of the self, that's interesting because if we are guided with virtue, we become like the good daemon ourselves through likeness. Isn't that interesting? Likeness. What do you say,
You've
Emma?
been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now.
That would mean that Emma herself would be a bad little girl too. She makes others like herself. So she needs to do a self-spanking. That's philosophy. And for which, they weren't guiding through wisdom, and for which reason they were not able to make others. They were not able to make others the kind of people that they themselves were. Whoops. Like. Put that in purple. And keep the T in there as well. Inasmuch as it was not through knowledge. Inasmuch as it was not through knowledge. So wisdom has to be including knowledge. And we saw that earlier, coordinated with nous, coordinated with intellect. Even though phronesis is beyond. O daemon, said Socrates, how do we know the good self if it's beyond experience? It is likely it has to be in this way, O Socrates, as you say. How much pages do we have to go? Oh, we're really close to the end. We're on the pretty much second last page. Is it not so then that if it is not through knowledge, that's where we are so far in our dialectic, surely it remains that self arises through good opinion. Here we have that same Greek. We have the EU, which is the prefix for good. We'll put that in green. And that's the so E looks like an E. U in Greek looks like a U. That funny thing, fancy D is a D. That O is an O. That backwards 3 thing with a tail is an X. Isn't that funny? I looks like an I. That fancy A is an A. So it's eudoxia. Good opinion. And we know doxia from, well, any people who've read the Republic would recognize doxia as what Socrates calls, what we would call modern day philosophers and debate bros and whatever else. They're not actually philosophers because philosophy is philos, love, Sophia, wisdom, that we've just been talking about. Socrates says what I would call them is what they really are, philodoxias, lovers of opinions. They like Kant's opinions, and they like Hegel's opinions, and they like this opinion, and that opinion, and a scientist's opinion, this opinion, this opinion. Really, they love their own opinions because they use it to justify their own opinions. That's what debates are for. That's why debates are horseshit. And compared to dialectic. He also calls them in the Phaedo lovers of contention. Philonikos. They like the drama. They like the drama and they like their opinions. Philonikos, philodoxia. But we want philosophy. We want that knowledge that can be taught, nailed down through something, through a certain kind of reasoning that can understand causes, logos applied to causes. Probably the dialectic, considering we've spent most of the text talking about it and demonstrating it. But also, he's saying this, it's not through wisdom. It was not some kind of wisdom. Because because the aspect of virtue that's not teachable is that which is beyond remembering or experience, phronesis. So wisdom isn't just knowledge, because he's saying we're ruling out wisdom as what was guiding these politicians, because wisdom isn't teachable. This kind of knowledge, the knowledge of self, is not teachable. It's self-knowledge. Now, of course, the knowledge of self is the thing that we teach in being. That's the teachable part. But there is a kind of higher knowledge that wisdom pertains to as well, beyond. So we have two levels of wisdom. We have two levels of self. The self that's knowable and the self beyond knowing. Interesting? Puzzling? Yes. So, if it is not through knowledge, surely then it remains that self arises through good opinion. This is what people who are politicians and statesmen use to maintain their cities upright. So good ruling is through right opinion. So we don't need people to have wisdom or be enlightened or be like Socrates. Just so long as you're doing what Socrates is telling you to do, you'll be a good politician. Good for us who are reading. Hooray. Yeah. But in regards to the phronesis, here is our clue for the Greek, because it's mind in purple. And we see this PH, that's the O is a PH, this O with a circle is a PH, that's an R, that's an O, that's an N, that's the phron that we want for phronesis. So it is through, but in regards to phronesis, they function no differently than oracles. Or here we go, speaking of oracles.
Don't be disgusting.
Don't be disgusting.
Too stupid to understand, and also refusing to understand.
Okay. Then oracles or divine prophets. Interesting. That's interesting. I gotta stop saying oracle now. For these that also speak... No, I don't like that. Because oracles can predict the future. And are aligned with divine providence. But it's because of their being of self that gives them that ability, gives them their passion and their energy and their desire for doing well and arguing and understanding and challenging injustice. That's all that's all aspects of the self. And I think that phronesis is what aligns people to divine providence, like the oracle. But here he's saying that oracles and divine... Oh, I see. Right, okay. Two levels of oracle. That would be the higher kind, but normally when we talk about oracles and divine prophets, these are the people who are divinely, like a preacher, you would say today. Not the higher kind of oracle. And prophets who are divinely inspired, maybe. Let's keep reading, let's see. So, it's by good opinion that these statesmen are able to manage their cities well. The ones that we used to consider wise because they ruled so well. Couldn't make their kids less idiots, though. Couldn't make their kids wise, though. But in regards to phronesis, they function no differently than oracles or divine prophets. For on the one hand, these also speak much that is true, whereas they know nothing of what they are saying. Right. So that kind of divinely inspired one. Right. So not the highest sense of oracle. There's two. There's one that's just a mouthpiece that's tripping out, and so you'd go to see different oracles in different places back in those ancient days, and you'd ask them a question, and then they'd give a response, and you'd have to have an interpreter to interpret the divinely inspired answer into a way that can be made sense of to address the person's question. Same thing with preachers. That's the ion, by the way. Socrates says, are you really divinely inspired? Because there is some kind of inspiration that gets a preacher he gets his holy book in front of him and he'll talk for 3 hours about finances and relationships. Hey, we see them now on podcasts. Not this one, this is different. But other podcasts. Where if they're reading from their whatever text that inspires them. Well, let's go back to the preachers are more of an example. Hey, these preachers, they don't know, they're not economists. They're not masters of psychology. They're not relationship experts, but they'll tell you how to spend your money. Usually give it to them. They'll tell you how your relationships should be. Different to what they do. Lots of scandals. They'll tell you about how to understand your psyche without being a psychologist. Don't actually help people, often cause worse problems, but they can talk and inspire. That kind of divine prophet. They know nothing what they're talking about. Meno says, I dare say it has to be in this way. Which is interesting because here we have prophets who don't even have right opinions. They're divinely inspired. But these good statesmen have good opinions. They happened to have good opinions and do well. Now, people who are following along this channel, it's different. Because you don't happen to have a good opinion. Like, the person at the end of the street who's, pretty good person, doesn't have any understanding, doesn't have any logos, hasn't applied the dialectic to their problems, hasn't applied the dialectic to nail down their right opinions, to translate it, to upgrade to knowledge, hasn't used the logos and dialectic to nail down the knowledge, hasn't used the logos and dialectic and their freedom from their problems to reflect on the self that's having knowledge to go beyond it to phronesis. But they're a pretty good person. Everyone says they're a pretty good person. They're a good captain of their football team. They're a soccer coach for their kids' soccer team. They go to church on Sundays. Everyone says they're a really great chap. They don't know anything, though. They just happen to have... Now, this is a kind of person that Socrates warns against in the Phaedo. because your evolution is not going to go well, or your spiritual evolution beyond this lifetime, which is the significance of the Phaedo, because it's Socrates' last day. Where is he going to go after he dies? Which is his kind of synopsis of the life of philosophy. Was it worth living the life of philosophy, considering he's about to die? Does he know where he's going to go, and is he happy? Is it going to go well? And he says, well, there's some people who happen to act pretty good, like on right opinion, but they're not going to escape the problems of reincarnation. Maybe they'll come back as an ant, a social creature like an ant or a bee or something. And people who live a lecherous-like life of like drunkenness maybe come back as a donkey. There are people who don't come back and they have negative experiences in the afterlife. So, the significance of not doing it through just happenstance, right opinion, like these particular statesmen who don't have wisdom. They just appeared to have wisdom and, lauded by people like Meno and Anytos. Meno, someone who recognizes these people as wisdom, but his idea of virtue was rubbish, sexist, racist, involved slavery, involved hurting his enemies. And Anytos, who was even worse than that. So not a good standard, right? And these preachers, and not Oracle like Diotima, who actually has, who's like beyond an Oracle. Yeah. See, Diotima was Socrates' philosophy teacher, had knowledge, had wisdom, had understanding, guided Socrates through his yoga of love and beauty to experience beauty itself in being. And that wasn't the end, that was the start of the next stage, because that's the model for developing true virtue. That's how the symposium ends. But she was able to function as an oracle, predicting the future, anticipating a disease, and was able to act in a way that put off a great catastrophe for like 10 years because of this oracle, this prophetic nature. So we want to be careful to distinguish the two kinds here, and he's talking about the negative kind here. Is it not proper, O Meno, that to call these people divine? We call them divine? Who, without having nous, mind, nous, knowledge, being, will set aright many and grand affairs by that which they say they do. Very much so. Accordingly then, we would rightly call divine all of those who are just now speaking, the oracles and prophets and poets, same thing. Divinely inspired poets. So the best songs like Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden and Let It Be, John Lennon, I heard another one today. What was it that I heard today that came all at once? It's like a one-hit wonder song. What was it? God damn it. I forgot. Oh, damn it. It's one of those songs like one of the banger songs that they call them these songs that you always hear at a pub or at a wedding and stuff. And the guy was saying, oh yeah, I recorded it in like an hour because it just came to me all at once. Same thing with Black Hole Sun, Chris Cornell, and Let It Be, John Lennon, I think it was Let It Be. Came all at once to them. So, the divinely inspired preachers, you'd go in this class as well sometimes. So, we call them divine, those who are the oracles, prophets, and poets, and also these statesmen who we must declare to be divine, and to be, here's the word, divinely inspired. That's what we were waiting for. Bum, bum, bum. How did they get their divine inspiration to do the things they did well? By being breathed upon. What?
Hey, whoa. Who asked you? Okay, go ahead. Wow. What? Wow.
Breathed upon. And also being possessed by the God. When they set aright many and grand affairs through speech while knowing nothing of what they speak. There we go. The people who happened upon it through an inspired state without knowing anything. And famously, like, preachers, we might put in that category, although we can argue that they're not really setting aright anything. But the best kind, we would say, the best kind. While knowing nothing. They don't know anything. Which is interesting because he said good opinion. Oh, I see. So this divine inspiration, something else possessing you, it's just an opinion. Just like we start with just these opinions from Socrates. When we read philosophy, just these opinions from Pierre Grimes. When we do dream analysis, just these opinions from the daemon. For us, they're just opinions. Yeah, we had the dream, but we didn't do it we didn't craft the complete universe and precise intelligibility and benefit, because dreams always guide you rightly. We didn't craft that knowingly. It was breathed into us, you would say. We're divinely inspired to dream when we sleep. Only the difference is, because we recognize that there is an intelligible, understandable pattern behind dreams, philosophical midwifery, and Socrates, Balboa translation only, then we're not reliant on luck, happenstance, to happen to have that song come to us all at once when driving home or whatever it is. We're actually doing the work to move from true opinions through the logos and dialectic denial. And so, we've said it a few times. But he's saying these people who we thought were wise ain't. They happened upon right opinion, sometimes by being possessed by the God, while knowing nothing about what they talk about. And without a doubt, the woman. The woman? Or the women? The women. Women. I've heard of these creatures. The women. What do you know about women?
I've been a bad little girl.
Doesn't help me. What do you know about women?
Can't you just engage with anything in a way that's like meaningful ever? It's just boring, I think, is the problem. I'm just bored of it.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked that. That was a silly question. That's boring. But also,
I can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Without a doubt, women, O Meno, indeed call these people who are good divine. What? Without a doubt, the women indeed call these people who are good divine. Who are the women? And when the Spartans praise any good person, they say, oh, this divine person. I don't know who the woman is. Actually, let's, right after we've been bad-mouthing all of the other translations of Plato other than the Balboa, let's completely contradict ourselves and have a look at one of the other translations. To see if there are any footnotes of the author explaining who these women are. So let's open that up here. Text. Open the whole text. I'll scroll down. Oh, we can all see it together. So I have that thing. Ooh, no. Ooh, look at that. We're in space. We're in space. Let's open up the thing. Properties. Where is it? This one? There we go. There we go. So this is the text from another translation. So I take back everything I said. I don't. About other translations. This is the wrong one. This is the wrong text. Okay, let me fix that. Okay, so we are looking for who these women are. So let's read this other translation to see if there are any clues as to who these women are that call good people divine. And we may rightly call those men divine who have no understanding, yet succeed in a great deed in word. So that's the same. And the women too, I presume, call good men divine, and the Spartans, when they eulogize a good man, they say he is a divine person. So, doesn't help us. I guess he just means women in general. So I guess it's just a catchphrase that women had back then. Women would say, oh, he's a divine man. He's a really divine man. Right? Let's keep going. And that makes sense. I guess there was more like sexist segregation back then. In fact, Meno pointed out, oh, men rule the city, women stay at home and rule the house. So it makes sense that Socrates can say, oh yeah, by the way, these women who you think are less than men have a more of an understanding than you about who is actually wise. So who's smarter, you or the women, Meno? Because they recognize people who are good. They don't say they're wise like you do, praising this man and that man, all these politicians. If they do well, it was through luck or through divine inspiration, we would say. And the women know that. They call them, they don't say they're wise, they say they're divine. And oh, by the way, you say that virtue is harming your enemies, like the Spartans. By the way, the Spartans have a better understanding than this than you, because they recognize this as well. They don't mistake people who happen to have good opinion through divine inspiration as wise. They say this divine person. So he's really slamming Meno here. He's really owning him. He's really...
The more holes, the better.
Come on, Emma.
I'm cute. Like, it's cutie pie.
All right, you're forgiven. So, my sound drops are random, by the way. I was hoping for the one that would say poggers, but I didn't get it. That one worked, kind of. Didn't. Have a drink. Looks like we've lost our chatter. And Meno says, it is quite manifest, Socrates, that you speak rightly. So I guess, turn down this. Well, that's too much. That's better. Look less like a ghost, but not too much darkness. Wee. Let's go this and go up a bit. You're speaking rightly, Socrates, even though perhaps Anytos may be offended by the statement of yours. So that's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. So Meno was the one who had the view that virtue is different from men and women. He was the sexist. He was the Republican. He was the fascist. He was the one that also said, oh, harming people is good, so long as they're your enemies like the Spartans. But earlier he was proven wrong and he was really butthurt about it. Oh, you watch out, well, you get killed as a sorcerer, Socrates. But after seeing Anytos do even worse, have an even more baby brain, infantile reaction, immature reaction to realizing he was wrong, now he's saying, I'm not going to be annoyed. I'm going to agree. But Anytos over here, he would be pissed. You're talking to Anytos, he would be very offended by that statement. That's quite funny. So, I don't know, has Meno been made better by seeing someone else go through the dialectic that he was struggling to go through? Was he made better by seeing somebody else get have a juvenile reaction to it? So today we've been talking, got some more in chat. Real quick, today we've been talking about those YouTube things that decoding the gurus or that Dr. Science dude or whatever who takes these charlatans and he shows them engage in a debate like Jordan Peterson or those Weinstein weirdos or the Joe Rogan, anyone who goes on Joe Rogan pretty much shows that when they get proven wrong, they have an immature reaction. They try and make it about personal attacks. They try and say, well, it's just because the deep state and everyone's against me. They play the victim, or they make it a personal thing. They make it a us versus them. We want to own the libs instead of being okay with being wrong so you can learn something.
There's only two options at the end of an argument. You're wrong, but now you always get to be right about that topic going forward. So you get to learn something, which is always a plus. Or two, you're right and you get to revel in being right. It's a win-win-win-win-win. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. So maybe it's fine to indulge in those sort of that sort of content, because by seeing other people react poorly to dialectics or being shown they're wrong might make it so that you will be less inclined to act that way yourself. Maybe you start to feel yourself getting pissed or feeling personally attacked. Well, no, I don't want to be like a Weinstein. Or I don't want to be like a whoever the hell from Jordan Peterson. I don't want to be like a Ben Shapiro or any of those terrible, terrible people. Right-wingers and all that sort of shit in America. Because I've seen them react, I was like, well, by the way, if Joe Rogan heard that, he would say,
I don't want to eat a monkey.
That he doesn't want to eat a monkey. But I wouldn't say that. Meno was saying, well, Anytos would be very offended to hear that women are smarter than us Athenians. Spartans women are smarter than us Athenian men. Spartans are smarter than us. So has Meno been made better? Let's check in with chat. Sorry, I'm a bit behind, Wiz. Have you heard of the demiurge, by the way? Yes, the creator god. So that same experience of knowledge or pure being is what's called the demiurge, because it reflects that pure ousia, reflects on itself and uses itself as a model to generate the physical world. Which is why all the physical things like beauty and sameness and justice that you never see actual sameness in the physical world. You never see beauty itself, but you can recognize a beautiful thing. That's the object of knowledge. That's learnable. Supposedly in Greek, he made this universe. Sorry, I got ahead of you. I think it's interesting due to the fact that we are humans always looking to biomimic, so possibly we end up creating another universe as Facebook. Good point. We make it like ourselves as well. Likeness. What we're seeing about virtue is good person makes other people good or benefits or guides them rightly towards their highest purpose. So, what's Facebook? A disgustingly weird place full of AI slop appealing to weird religious fanaticism and just entirely used to steal people's data to be sold by a terrible way. Because the creator of Facebook is that kind of a sleazy grifter. Sleazy, disgusting person. So it's like him. What happened when Elon Musk took over Twitter? He made it a Nazi, right-wing Nazi fascist hellhole. Because that's his way of being. He is a white supremacist Nazi. Openly. So yeah, good point. Though if we made a universe synthetically, then perhaps we can learn about this reality was created by, say, the demiurges. So for example, if we get to the point where we can upload consciousness to... Upload consciousness? Consciousness is non-physical. Mind is being. That demiurge is consciousness. That's pure consciousness or pure mind. That's the thing that we want to remember through learning. But virtue is even beyond that. So how do we get virtue? We want to use knowledge, of course. So if we can upload our consciousness some degree to a computer and allow it to make guide choices within the PC, but the PC has predefined tools. Like we said, about what do we actually do in regards to thoughts and feelings. Say that again, please. Oh, which part? Likeness? The demiurge. This is the say that again about the bit ages ago. Well, we haven't opening point response. The Platonic dialogue that addresses this very point. What's the nature of the demiurgos? How it does creation, like how specifically does creation unfold from the good self to pure being to the physical world, the three levels. The one self at the top, which is beyond even experience. The pure being or the demiurgos, which is the object of our learning. What we focus on in philosophy. So the dialectic is always applied to, or pretty much applied to, the different aspects of the demiurges, the different aspects of nous. So nous is pure intelligence. Ousia is its dynamic quality. Demiurgos is the functioning of it. You could say it's experienced as bliss. In the experience, you could recognize it as pure beauty or beauty itself. It's perfectly ordered the way it must be. That's pure justice. All of these are the objects of focus for our inquiry or our dialectics in philosophy. That's what philosophy is. They're all aspects of that self-knowing itself as pure mind, or the first unfolding from the one self. So the Timaeus, once we get time, once everybody hears how awesome and fun this is and how great this channel is and how great the chatters are, and I get Twitch, whatever, membership or something, and I can afford to do this more often. I do it pretty often anyway, but still it'd be nice to be able to support myself through this. We can read the Timaeus. The Timaeus is the inquiry into that unfolding process from the demiurgos. But yeah, that's where, that's, maybe you'd like it. I don't know if there's a Balboa translation of the Timaeus out there at the moment. It'd be awesome if it was. But absolutely, we need to get into that one. That's a really good one. It's exploring that unfolding creation, how mind turns upon itself, knows itself as pure being, as knowledge, and uses it as the model for creation. Which is why the dialectic is applied to it. And if we have that experience of knowledge, whether it be the aspect of it as beauty itself, the symposium, the aspect of it as justice itself, or self-justice in the Republic, then we use that as the model ourselves to create beautiful things, to do just things. And in philosophical midwifery, that's the model that we compare our false images to. So our false images of the self, our false images of beauty, our false images of justice is what we don't know we're carrying, but is what binds us to ignorance. A certain kind of ignorance called the pathologos that blinds us from evidence and reason. That causes us to be guided by the anti-self, the pathologos, false vision of the self. And what we read here is, let's go back to it, the let's say blessedness. This was the thing here. If we use our learning, our keeping our cool, our courage to follow the logos, even though our opinions say something different or our beliefs say something different, still, if you use your right opinion, you keep reading this text, you tune into this podcast every day, you use that coordinated with whatever experience of being that you've had, of ousia, of the demiurgos that you've had, nous, that's your intellect, that's intelligence itself. We become intelligent to the extent we share in intelligence itself. If we use our learning and our quickness of our intellect to reach that, and our actions are coordinated with nous and are guided by phronesis, guided by the self, the good self beyond that, then everything that we attempt or endure ends in us being the good daemon. The good daemon. Highest level of functioning of the self that's for the good, that guides beneficially. That's level of virtue. However, or that is virtue maybe, that's our question. If you are led by the anti-phronesis, which we will call the pathologos, that class of belief that we read the midwifery book to understand, because it ties us to our problems, it causes our negative states of mind, it causes those intruding thoughts that self-sabotage or distract us. You're right, we don't choose our thoughts, but those thoughts are sent to us to keep us stuck in our problem so that we have a reason to learn philosophical midwifery. Which is what we're here for. The most important thing we can do as a human being. Every single person. If we were rational, we'd all do it every day. It's the only thing that solves human problems. That's why we still have Nazis and genocides and capitalism and all this shit. Because no one's doing midwifery yet. Because if we are guided by the anti-self or the pathologos, everything we do ends in the opposite way, or kaka, bad, daemon. You guide things poorly. That's the injustice. That's the repeating cycles of immaturity and injustice we suffer as a species and individually. That's why we do unto others what was done unto us. That's why we pass on our ignorance to our children. That's why the most ignorant people seek to pretend to be a knower. Not because they actually can help people. They want to be the tyrant because they think that's virtue. It's the opposite. And that's why they're harmful. Anyone who's ever been on Joe Rogan's podcast. Is it a wordy book? Which one? philosophical midwifery. We read it on this channel. We do Plato. Oh, Timaeus. Yeah. Timaeus is a bit of a challenge. It's challenging, that one. If we can find if there is a Balboa translation of it, then we'll definitely do it here. Otherwise, I don't know what we'll do. We'll have to find one with the Greek so we can. Yeah, it's going to be tricky because you're only really doing philosophy if you're reading the Balboa translation, because all of the key terms, all of the puzzle pieces, they're not there. They're just not. They just haven't been translated properly. Like this one here, kakadaemon. That's significant. Anti-phronesis. So even this one, the word phronesis is translated as mindfulness, but thankfully, the translator puts it in purple with a capital M, so we know it's significant, so we can look right underneath it at the Greek and see, oh, that's phronesis. That's the key puzzle. That's literally the key puzzle. You never, ever, ever see phronesis translated. The whole fucking text turns on this one word. Because if virtue is knowledge, you can learn virtue. If virtue is phronesis, you can't learn it. Because it's not an object of memory. It's not an object of learning, remembering. It's not the demiurgos. Not one translation ever has translated that word properly until this one. So how the fuck can you do philosophy? If philosophy is discovering puzzles and solving it using the text by piecing it together and weaving it together the way we're doing here, if that's what philosophy is, which is a movement from gaining the right opinions from the text, piecing it together in this puzzle-solving way, coordinated with the dialectic, in a way that prepares you for remembering of knowledge or nous, nailing down your right opinions with that understanding, nailing down even your experience of nous, and taking all that to wonder about phronesis. If that's what philosophy is, no one's been fucking doing philosophy for over 1,000 years. That's not my opinion. That's just the book. Socrates is saying that. Literally, he's saying that. He's telling us over and over. He's giving us this puzzle. He says to Meno, hey, look, you're not learning if you're not learning the dialectic, son. He says, hey, you want to... Meno begins this text by saying, hey, can you learn virtue? Socrates says, hey, slow down, son. To ask that question, you got to know two things. What is virtue? And what is learning? You don't know either. It's, oh, I went to the best schools. He was a rich kid. He's well connected. His family knows the king of Persia. Went to the best school with the best teacher, Gorgias, supposedly. Well, give me a definition of virtue. He couldn't. He just pointed to things he liked. Well, harming your enemies, I like that. Keeping women in the house, I like that. Having slaves? That's not a definition. The first category of the dialectic is definition. So Socrates says, well, that's crazy. By the way, have you experienced being, or the nous, or the functioning would be the demiurgos, but have you experienced ousia? That's the whole point of education, right? No, you haven't. That's insane. What have you been doing? How'd they let you out of why'd they let you out of school when you haven't been initiated into that experience? What's your model of beauty then? What's your model of justice then? And of course you haven't if you haven't learned the dialectic. So he's really been nailing down the significance of the dialectic over and over. And he's demonstrated it over and over and over and over and over. He's telling us, use it to solve the puzzle of the book. But you will never get that question unless you're reading the Balboa. You'll never get the pieces to solve that question unless you're reading the Balboa. But if you do, hooray! Where's my hooray? Because then you can play the greatest game in town, the only real game in town, the noblest game, philosophy. This kind of puzzle solving is what we're here for. It's our purpose as human beings. Necessarily, if we don't do it, well, genocide, capitalism, extinction of our species, ending of our planet. Because the dialectic has to be applied in this way to awaken the experience of knowledge, nail it down in understanding, and use it as the model or paradigm for your dialectic, much like the demiurgos uses that same thing as the model for its creation. So we are becoming like the demiurgos. And we know that because of these opinions, these right opinions from the text. Socrates has laying it out for us. If we are guided by right opinions, we're golden. I might not have knowledge of going to San Francisco, but if I know someone who has and I have the right opinions of how to get there, I can guide you just as well as someone who's been there. That's why we read this every day. It's also why we do dream analysis and midwifery on this channel. By the way, what are those right opinions guiding you to do? To nail down those right opinions with understanding, with the logos and dialectic, with a certain kind of reasoning upon the causes, like we've been doing about the cause of creation, the demiurgos. Reason about it. And we're going to get into it more in the Timaeus. But what does that do? Literally, it's contemplation, the model of yoga. Sustained, focused attention on that which is eternal and divine, with your highest vision, your highest understanding, the highest level of integrity, with an open, curious, aporia state of mind, wonder. But that's not enough for meditation. That's why meditation almost never works in like Zen centers and ashrams and things. Because seeing as that's such a significant goal, human beings have something to come up that blocks you from your most significant goal. The anti-logos, the kaka daemon. Here, the anti-logos, the anti-self. That's the pathologos. So you can't really be doing spirituality, you can't really be doing learning unless you're also doing philosophical midwifery. You need both. You need to remove the false and use that freedom to discover the true. And what does that understanding lead us to? Well, that experience of being. Mind knowing itself. You knowing yourself as ultimate reality. But as we've been reading here, that's not good enough. And we know that too because we've seen gurus and priests and spiritual leaders who have had these experiences, but they still have their problems. Famously, so we have the archetypes in anime of the drunken master or the pervy sage is a big one. Just ask the Catholic Church. So in other words, even your experience of being isn't virtue because it's not necessarily guiding you well. It has to be coordinated with phronesis, guiding you to know the self that's beyond even that experience. Which is a problem. Because how do you learn that? You can't remember that which is not a rememberable thing. So what do? We're screwed, are we? I don't know. It's a puzzle. That's the puzzle here. Pause for a second. One more time. My cough button. My evolved form. He's evolving. That's my evolved Pokemon form. And my cough button. So what? So we're in a bit of a pickle, aren't we? Well, fortunately, Socrates said, well, you know what? To be guided by right opinion, so long as it is right opinion, it's still alright. But then he said, hang on a second. These people who we thought of as wise, people who happen to be good politicians or whatever, that wasn't wisdom. They happened upon good opinions through divine dispensation or divine inspiration. What does that mean? That means people like Meno and Anitos, people who are actual politicians of Athens and think they know shit. They think they know this stuff. And by the way, what do they think virtue is? Treating women like garbage. Treating women like they're less than men, and also hurting your enemies, invading your enemies. And we just saw, hey, by the way, these women recognize that these politicians aren't wise, but they call the good ones divine. They're smarter than you. Oh, and these Spartans that are your enemies that you think it's just to hurt, they know that as well. They don't say good, they praise a good person not as a wise person, but as a divine person, divinely inspired. Now, Meno might have gotten pissed off about that, as he did earlier, but after seeing Anitos react in an even worse way, he says this. He says, well, you're speaking rightly, but Anitos would be annoyed. Anitos would be offended by that statement, though. Anitos would be pissed at you. And he's right, he was. And he ends up as one of the accusers of Socrates that ended with his death by the government. So that's funny. Okay, that's enough. Should be. Socrates, that does not concern me at all. Anitos' offense at the truth. For Meno, we will converse with him again. Oh. But now, if we were right in the way in which we spoke and investigated this whole logos of the whole of being and of self. Is that a clue? The whole logos? Again, we see the word logos translated properly for the first time ever. How significant is that? Especially if this is a key term. The whole logos. Then virtue or excellence would neither arise by nature nor be teachable, since self comes without nous by divine dispensation to those whom self may come, unless there is such a person among our statesmen who can make another person into a statesman. But if there is, then this individual could be said to be so among the living. But if there is, then this individual could almost be said to be so among the living, as Homer says, as Tiresias was among the dead. When he says concerning self that such a man has the breadth of life, salt, mindfulness, among those in Hades, the invisible realm, while the others are but flittering shadows. Ooh. Okay, we probably want to translate this a bit better, but let's keep going. So, Hades, of course, isn't hell. It's the realm of being. It's being. So, one recognizes this and says the invisible realm, or the non-physical realm we've been talking about just now. So such a man like Tiresias, if he is virtuous and can make other people virtuous too, then such a man's self, phronesis, breath of life, is in that realm while others are but flittering shadows. For such a man, the same relation would also exist in this realm, just as virtue would be true reality as compared to shadows. So all these people here who happen to hit the mark either get so from some divine dispensation that they happen upon right opinions. That's it. There is no, you can't learn virtue. It's not born, you can't learn it, we're all screwed. Even the good people only get there through right opinion, and they only get that through divine dispensation. They got lucky. The god happened to touch them, happened to possess them for a moment. Unless there is someone whose self or life exists in the realm of being, while others, attention, self, phronesis, is on the physical world that is just flittering shadow. Just as excellence would be true reality compared to shadows. Is there such a person? Have we heard in this text of anyone who's able to make anyone better? You appear to me to speak most excellently and beautifully, Socrates. Is Meno better than he was? Now then, from this logos, reasoning, Meno, it has come to light. Ooh. Let's highlight that. For us, that virtue comes by divine dispensation to whom self comes. Whereas we shall have clear knowledge about self at that time when, before inquiring in what way excellence comes to human beings, we must first try to discover what in the world excellence is, self by self. Where have you heard that expression before? Self by self. Self in relation to self. What do we have to do? Discover. Discover what? What the heck excellence is. How? Self by self. What the heck does that mean? If we do that, we can come to a clear knowledge about self. Otherwise, it's just luck. Divine dispensation. Roll of the dice. But now, the hour has come for me to go. Oh. But, on the other hand, you must persuade your friend tie that word in, anitos, just as you are here and now persuaded by these words, in order that self may be more gentle. For if you can persuade him, then it is beneficial service, which you will affect for not just yourself, but for your country, Athenians. What have we seen? Hey, you can't teach virtue because all these people who we thought of as wise haven't been able to teach anyone. But if there is such a person that can also make another person better, like themselves, and that might be an example of virtue. Someone who has virtue. How do you get knowledge of that which is beyond the experience of knowledge? Because not only do you have to benefit, you also have to have that knowledge of self that's beyond being. Here's an idea. There is a kind of clear knowledge. Is a clear knowledge different from a brilliant, overwhelmingly beautiful? Doesn't have to be, take that word overwhelming out. Exceptionally, ultimately beautiful, ultimately real, ultimately knowing, highest possible experience. Is that experience of knowledge different from something that might be a clear knowledge? What do we do in midwifery when we remove our problems, remove our false images and beliefs about ourselves that we don't even know we have? Are we adding or clearing away? We shall have a clear knowledge about self at that time when, before we wonder in which way excellence comes to be, we first, which was Meno's question coming in, hey, do we teach knowledge? Do we teach virtue? How do we get virtue? Is it innate? Do we learn it? You will only get clear knowledge of self if you first, before doing that, discover what exactly virtue is, self by self. What the heck does that mean? What the heck is clear knowledge? What the heck is discovering something self by self? Or self in relation to self? By the way, forget all that. What you need to do is persuade Anitos as a friend. What's the way of treating someone like a true friend and lover? Friend or lover? That's in the text as well. Persuade him just as you've been persuaded by these words, in order that self may be more gentle, less angry, reactive, defensive against finding out he's wrong about what he holds most true about self, reality, and virtue. If you can persuade him, then that is beneficial. What does true good self or true virtue have to be? Beneficial. Not just to self, but to our world, our society. What's he asking Meno to do? What's Socrates asking you to do? Is he giving us the map to virtue? If you're hearing about this map, what does that make it for you? If you do it, what will that be? There's your puzzle. Best of luck. Have fun on your quest. Join the Discord and let us know how you go. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun. It's a big one. Thank you for joining me in chat. And I hope to see you next time. Be excellent. Bye.